We're going to call to order the deliberative session of the Timberlane Regional School District. We could start out by rising and doing the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if we could start out by introducing the head table. Michelle, if we can start with you, please.
Absolutely. I'm Michelle O'Neill from Danville, Chairman of the School Budget Committee.
Laura Garvey from Sandown, Chair of the School Board.
I'm Richard LaSalle, Superintendent of Schools.
Gordon Graham, School District Council.
George Stokinger, Business Administrator.
Winfred Fennerberg, Assistant Superintendent.
Peter Velo, Plastow School Board Rep.
Nancy Stevenson, Danville School Board.
Michael Mascola, Atkinson School Board Rep.
Elizabeth Costa, Plastow School Board Rep.
Louis Borselli, Sandown School Rep.
Lisa Whitby, Plastow School Board Rep.
Kate Rochford, Vice Chair of the School Budget Committee of Atkinson.
Greg Sparrow, Timberlane Regional Budget Committee from Atkinson.
Eddie Shuput, Timberlane Budget Committee, Sandown. Kathy Lisi, Budget Committee, Sandown.
Thank you. Also, I'm going to read a list of possible non-voters who may be making presentations tonight. After I read the list, I'm going to need a motion. Richard LaSalle, George Stokinger, Gordon Graham, Kelly Killen, Scott Strange, Roxanne Wilson, Beth Rancon, Nancy Danahy, Michelle Gatos, Doug Ralph, Michael Hogan, John Holland, Tony DiBartolomeo, Jim Hughes, Linda Hewer, and Renzo Benaggi. Is there a motion for the voters to be able to, non-voters to be able to speak? Be a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Noes? Abstentions? Ayes have it. Just a couple of announcements. All deliberative session materials are posted on the district website under 2012-13 budget and bond information. The School Board and Budget Committee will meet independently immediately following the deliberative session to make any recommendation action on the warrant if necessary. And the annual report, it's going to be posted to the district website on Friday. For those without internet access, please contact the superintendent's office for a hard copy. And a reminder that the March 1st school board meeting is canceled. The board is scheduled to meet next Friday, February 16th, for their regular meeting. And all the registered voters, if you haven't done so already, please check in with your supervisors. We're also, the rules of the meeting, we're going to be following the Robert's Rules of Order. And then if you are going to speak on a warrant, if you can approach the microphone, state your name, your last name, also what town, and if you could spell your last name so that the clerk, when she's taking the notes, can get that. Okay. The first session of the annual meeting. You're hereby notified to meet at the Timberlane Performing Arts Center on Greener Road in Plastow, New Hampshire on Tuesday, the 9th day of February. This session shall consist of explanation, discussion, and debate of warrant articles, numbers 2 through 7. Warrant articles may be amended subject to the following limitations. Warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended, and warrant articles that are amended shall be placed on the official ballot for the final vote on the main motion as amended. The second session of the annual voting, the voting on the warrant articles 1 through 7 will be conducted by official ballot to be held in conjunction with the town meeting, and voting to be held on Tuesday, the 13th of March, 2012, at the town election polls in Atkinson, Danville, Plastow, Sandown. Okay, Article 1, election of officers. To choose for the following district officers. Article 1, it's going to be placed on the ballot as read. And moving on to Article 2. The high school physical education athletic locker rooms, team rooms, and mini gym renovations and reconstruction project at the 5-year bond. Shall the Timberlane Regional School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4,800,000 for the renovation and construction of the Timberlane Regional High School physical education athletic locker rooms, team rooms, and mini gyms, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $4,800,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and to authorize the district to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes to determine the rate of interest thereon, and to further raise and appropriate an additional sum of $82,000 for the first year's interest payment on the bonds. It is going to be a 3/5 majority vote. It was recommended by the school board 8-0. It was recommended by the budget committee. Is there a motion to place this article on the floor?
Make motion.
Is a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. The article is on the floor for discussion. Dr. LaSalle, a presentation.
Thank you. The name is rather long, obviously, with physical education, athletic locker room, mini gym renovation, and reconstruction. It's actually the entirety of the athletic area at the high school minus the large gym. The large gym is actually fairly newly renovated in very good shape. So it represents the locker rooms, the smaller gym, or what we call the mini gym or wrestling gym, and surrounding facilities, including office spaces, et cetera. About 5 years ago, the Timberlane Regional School District conducted a capital improvements plan, and bringing in architects, engineers, educational specialists, worked together to take a look and assess the facilities at the Timberlane Regional School District and help us put together a comprehensive plan for the next 10 years. In that plan, it called for a number of smaller projects, many of which have been done to date. Things like renovations of kitchens, recently renovated the kitchen at Pollard, before that kitchen in Atkinson, and before that in Danville. A lot of roof repair, well at Danville, much needed infrastructure corrections. Also the creation of some better educational space at the high school. The old metal shop was converted into 2 state-of-the-art science classrooms fairly recently. The wood shop was converted to a design-build pre-engineering facility. There was a special education facility created at the middle school. The plan also called for some medium-range plans, and the one that we're going to discuss this evening actually falls into that category. And additionally, it basically identified the middle school as end of life. And what end of life means in architectural terms is that when it is subject for renovation, it does not really qualify for renovation. It would cost more to renovate the building than it would be to replace the building. And so end of life doesn't mean that it's falling down or dilapidated in any way. What it means is that in order to bring it up to code, in order to make it a viable facility by today's standards, it would need too much work. It would be better to build a new building than to renovate that building. So the capital improvement plan calls for, over the next number of years, it calls for the building of a new high school and the retrofitting or conversion of the current high school into a middle school. Those are fairly large projects. The original capital improvement plan had the planning work for those projects beginning already, and those projects have been put on hold for, I guess, obvious reasons: the state of the economy, number one, and number two, the state of New Hampshire, who has historically in the past contributed a certain amount of money towards construction projects, has put a moratorium on their contribution of monies towards large-scale construction projects. And that money, there's a moratorium. It was on for one biennium for 2 years, and they just reestablished that moratorium for 2 more years. So there's a 4-year moratorium on building aid from the state. Building aid is currently under study at the state. There's a committee, legislative committee, that's looking at what the future of building aid will be for the state of New Hampshire, and we're awaiting the results of that work so that we can then evaluate our capital improvement plan in terms of what we're going to need in the future for facilities. A medium-sized project, however, is one that does not qualify for building aid, but is large enough that it would require bonding. And the project that we're discussing this evening is what they call, I mean, it's not a small project, it's $4.8 million, but it is a project that is large enough that you would not do it in one operating budget, that it's small enough that it wouldn't qualify as a construction project that would be subsidized by the state building aid. The work that is being proposed, and I can show you some of that in a little bit, is actually consistent with the conversion to the middle school, the future conversion. It will in fact serve the high school very well in the meantime, and it in fact is the work that would be done at the middle school, so it would give us a head start in terms of the work, in terms of retrofitting the high school for a middle school. So it's a project that would give us immediate benefit as a high school, it would give us future benefit as the capital improvement moved forward in whatever year it would happen when a new high school would be built in the area. The goal of Timberlane Regional Physical Education athletic locker room, team room, and mini renovation construction project is to construct functional athletic and instructional spaces to benefit the high school physical education curriculum, co-curricular programs, that would include our music and drama program, and the greater Timberlane community. The reconstruction will impact athletic and educational spaces, locker rooms, team rooms, administrative offices, and storage areas to not only improve functionality for the purpose of physical education and athletics, but also to meet the current standards for safety, equity, and accessibility. And I'll talk a little bit about those last three words in a moment. What you see on the screen is the high school retrofitted as a middle school. And you can see over on the right-hand side the Performing Arts Center where we're seated this evening. One of the proposed changes that would be made when the retrofit would take place is that the PAC Center, Performing Arts Center, would be connected to the middle school, so that students walking between the facilities would remain indoors and would remain secure. A larger portion is on the bottom part of your screen, which is a reconstruction of the area that is currently the office administrative areas at the high school. It would renovate that area and it would make it a two-story facility with additional classrooms that would be needed above the administrative space. It would also give the high school a facade that would match the Performing Arts Center, tied together as one building and give it a much better curbside appeal and look. Down the middle of the building you see a white line that traverses the building. One of the areas that's difficult in reconstruction or renovation projects is to bring a building up to modern code. And one of those areas that is difficult is in terms of hall space. Older buildings have hall sizes, hall spaces that were designed at a different time, and they were also designed when the capacity of the school was smaller. Many of those hall spaces are insufficient, they're too narrow. You can't really expand those spaces in a renovation, but what you can do, at least in this case, is you could create additional hall space that would allow students to move from space to space. So those three things I just mentioned, those will be part of future work that would happen when it was time to convert the current high school into a middle school, years down the road. What we're talking about this evening is actually in the top left-hand side. That's the athletic area at the current high school. And what we're talking about this evening is a renovation and reconstruction. And let me just define those words quickly. Renovation is lighter work. That's fixing what's broken, renewing, improving the space that's there. Reconstruction means demolition, and then rebuilding. And this project actually calls for both. And I'll talk a little bit about that as I go through. The project will double the available physical education instructional space and allow dance, fitness, project adventure, and competitive PE. It'll allow the physical education, health staff to employ a greater variety of instructional strategies to better engage students in learning. It'll create a space for instruction in dance and fitness, which we currently do not have. And it would provide a climbing wall and rope equipment to implement project adventure activities. That's actually a very big part for all students, but particularly for a certain population of students with certain disabilities. That's very much a part. We actually contract that service to an outside vendor currently, so it would give us the capacity to have that kind of programming in the school. More benefits: to provide safe and suitable indoor spaces for physical education courses to participate in team sports, create a fitness and weight training area for use by all students in phys ed courses and co-curricular. Another part of modern physical education. It's not just the ball in the gym anymore. It's also building those habits for lifetime health, which involve having facilities like many of us see when we go to gyms, fitness gyms, where you have aerobic equipment and some lightweight equipment. Create a classroom space designed for dance instruction. Again, that would be for floor exercise, aerobic type dancing, but it would also be for performing arts type dancing to help support our performing arts program, which is a very alive and excellent program at Timberlane High School. And it would provide space for physical education, athletic department, and special education spaces. I'll show that in a little bit. The project will bring the athletic facility and program into compliance with Title IX laws. Title IX laws have been around for a long time, and that's the law that requires equal distribution of facilities and opportunities for girls and boys. And it's a very serious law. It's what makes colleges like Northeastern drop their football team. They need to have equal opportunities for boys and girls. The reality in Timberlane is that in terms of physical education space, locker room space, team space, we actually allocate about 3/4 of our space to boys, 1/4 to girls, and yet we have more girl athletes than boy athletes, a number that actually surprised me, and I know has surprised some people to hear that. It'll provide a fitness and weight training room to allow athletes of all sports to train. Very important for safety and well-being. Provide suitable locker facilities, and I'll show you that our locker facilities are essentially non-existent. And it'll provide storage space for athletic equipment. And again, storage, you'll see that what we do with storage, we have no storage space, and we have to improvise for that. The youth program used for the high school facilities, updating and enlarging the facility will better serve the community needs. All weekend long, every weekend long, our facilities are used by community groups for park recreation type athletics and other supporting programs. And this would actually create a facility that is much more rentable, much more serviceable to the community, and much more securable as a facility for renting purposes. What you see in front of you here is actually a mock-up of what the existing high school facility, and it's just to orient people in terms of where we are. Over on the far right-hand side of the screen, there's that empty white spot. That's actually where the cafeteria is in the current school. So if you're familiar with the high school, that's where it would be. Many people do not know, but there are a couple of locker rooms, much in need of renovation, that are actually between the cafeteria and the large gym. That would be on the right-hand side of your screen. Then you see the big gym, and again, the big gym is in fine shape. There's no plans to do anything with that, except to cut a couple access doors in there to better manage the flow of traffic. But that facility remains as is. The next area to the left of the large gym is actually the locker room space. And to the far left-hand side of that, you see a very narrow hallway. That's actually the main entranceway from the outside into the athletic area. And that is, in fact, the area where about 80% of all visitors to Timberlane arrive. And I'll show you what that space actually looks like. Athletic teams arrive, they offload the bus, and that's where they enter our facilities. And then on the left-hand side, you see what we refer to as the mini gym. It's not really a mini gym. A mini gym technically has to be larger than that, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. That actually is what we use for wrestling and for cheerleading. What you see in front of you, and I apologize for some of these pictures, is not disrepair. What you see on the left is actually annual repair, and that's in the middle of annual repair. That's the area that we currently use for our weight room. And it's not that old. It was built in the 1980s. It's single block construction. It's not sheathed on the outside. We do seal it every 2 years, but it has obviously moisture issues which cause peeling paint and some mold issues, and we attack that and we service that every year. And what you see here is summertime, and you see us basically scraping, sterilizing that area. We repaint it, and over the next school year it begins to deteriorate. It's just bad construction, and it has some fairly significant flaws that I'll be talking about in a little bit. On the right-hand side, you see another facility, and the purpose of that picture is really just to show that it's not leaking roofs or plumbing. It's just moisture that is taken from the air by these concrete blocks, and it's transferred into the building, and it's causing the peeling and the moisture issues that we struggle with. I don't know how well this picture shows on the screen. The picture on the left-hand side is actually one of the walls of the mini gym or the wrestling gym, and I don't know. Again, I don't know how visible it is, but on the right-hand side, you can actually see cracking that goes ceiling to floor. And about 3 or 4 blocks over, you see another line of cracking that goes ceiling to floor. The engineer, the gentleman that you see on the right-hand picture in 2008, had some very serious concerns about the integrity of this building. It was not and is not, we've had it inspected, it was not and is not at the point where it's in imminent danger of collapsing, but it is a building that is substantially below code and is of construction concern to the engineers and certainly to us. Their recommendation is that that building needs to be torn down and reconstructed. On the right-hand side, you see the inside of that same mini gym, and the gentleman that you see there was the engineer that did our inspection originally in 2008, and he stood there until we removed that basketball hoop from the wall. He was that concerned about the integrity of the wall. So that basketball hoop is no longer there and has not been there since 2008. And again, it's an area that is very much a safety concern to all of us. Picture on the left is an old, and it's tired. It's a boys' gang shower. There is leaking that you see. Leaking is a problem because in the old construction there were not intermittent shutoffs that were created, so we have to shut the water down to the whole school, repair the dripping faucets. The reality, however, is that those gang showers are not used. They, in an old-fashioned way, they get their hot water from the boilers. We're energy conscious. We don't run our boilers until November. We shut them off in April. And therefore, those showers have cold water for most of the school year. And also, even in this day and age, we're finding that more and more young men will not take gang showers. They're demanding and asking for privacy, just as you would see in girls' locker room facilities. So those lockers are essentially unused. On the right-hand side, you see 3 young men that were kind enough to stage for us to show the narrowness of the hallway. It's a very long hallway with red lockers that are 3-tier. They're 3-tier, the top, middle, and bottom lockers. They're in very good shape. They are tiny, tiny, tiny. And they're also constructed on this narrow hallway where up to 50, 60 students might be walking back and forth into the locker room and out of the locker room. You can imagine that young man bending down to the bottom locker, trying to unlock that locker, get his things, standing in the middle of that hallway. This is an example of narrow hallways that no longer meet code. It's also an example of perfectly good lockers that are totally non-functional and are not used at all because they are just flat out too small and they're positioned in a way that they're not safe to use. The top left-hand side, you see a gang shower that's been a little bit more renovated than the other one. Again, it looks better. It still is not that functional because it's a gang shower which boys typically will not want to use, and it pumps cold water most of the year. You notice that there are no locker facilities. So what the boys do is, with faith, they leave their books, they leave their clothes, they leave their iPads, they leave their cell phones in the locker room. They go out and they perform in gym, whether it's in the gym or go outside on the field or on the track. They perform in their physical education class. On the faith system, they come back and hope that their stuff is still there. Nothing is secured. The bottom side, the bottom left-hand side, is a girls' locker room that has showers that have a little more privacy. You notice the girls creatively use them. They use them for storage. They put their bags, team bags in there, and they creatively use the poles to hang because those showers are also not used, primarily because of the lack of hot water and also because they really just don't meet the standards where girls feel comfortable using them. The right-hand picture is kind of a blast from the past. It's a design that was used in the 50s and 60s for girl locker rooms, where they tried to give maximum privacy to young ladies. So each one had their own little cubby with a little curtain. Inside they had a locker, they had a bench, and they had a shower. Again, there are not enough of them for a class. There are not enough of them for a team. They take a lot of space. They don't allow for girls' teams to gather and have their team meetings like boys would have in the locker room meetings, because they take up a lot of space. And they're just not a modern design. They're not a design that would be used in a modern school. And they're also not ADA compliant, which is also a requirement, which means Americans with disabilities. So anything we build, in fact, anything we touch, anything we propose to fix has to be brought up to ADA compliance, which means it has to be fully accessible to individuals with disability. You see another picture of those little lockers, and if you notice that knob, those locker knobs are about the size of a padlock. So you can probably imagine that that locker is about the width of 2 padlocks. I don't know what the locker was ever designed for. You could probably stuff a t-shirt in there. You might be able to stuff a pair of shorts in there. You cannot put a pair of sneakers in there. The right-hand side is a boy who was kind enough to pretend that he could put his gym bag in there. Top left-hand, you see the athletic director's office, storage space, and distribution center all in one. We don't have space. People make do the best they can. I guess that's the title of this particular screen that you see up there. Underneath there, you see a boiler type room, which doubles as storage because we have no other storage or no proper storage for equipment, so we put it where we can. And on the top right-hand side, you see the mini gym or the wrestling gym, and you'll notice that we do, in fact, in a modern way, teach aerobics, aerobic dance. But when we do it, we have to be creative. We don't have a sound-wired facility. We don't have a proper floor. We don't have a proper room for it. So what we do is we improvise by creating amplified speakers and using someone's iPod. So we are doing the best we can with the space we have. This is that narrow hallway that I talked about. This is the main entranceway into the athletic facility. If you look about 2/3 of the way up that hallway, you'll see some sunshine coming in. That's where the door is. So a team of boys might travel 2 hours from Keene. 60 boys will enter into this narrow hallway. That's where we receive them into the Timberlane community. And their first thought after travel on a bus for 2 hours is only one, which is to find the men's room. And because the facilities are, and I'll show those to you in a minute, and I'll apologize in advance for that, but because the facilities are so limited in terms of the locker room space, Mr. Fantasia, our athletic director, will take them for a tour of the building, dropping 5 or 6 of them at each bathroom as they go so that they can use facilities, because we don't have proper facilities for our visiting team or for our own teams. And again, I apologize for these pictures. The one on the left is the bathroom facility in the boys' locker room. During a previous renovation, they put new tile on top of old tile, and I'm in the process of renovating my bathroom. I chipped the tile off. I have the injuries to prove it. Here they just mounted on top of the old, and it's not staying, obviously. Where the urinal is, that's not tiles falling off. There was actually a floor style with a wall style with a floor basin urinal that they don't make anymore. That was replaced with a standard urinal. There's about 3 inches between the urinal and the sink. It certainly doesn't meet any kind of health code. It doesn't meet any kind of ADA compliance code. It certainly has no privacy associated with it. And quite honestly, it's just flat out inappropriate and disgusting. On the right-hand side, you see an area where you see falling and damaged ceiling tiles. That is not really the product of vandalism. Those are lightweight tiles that were never meant for the design. They're not meant for high moisture areas, and so they peel and they buckle and they come falling out, and when they fall out, people try to push them back up so that they'll stay up there, and they get a little bit damaged sometimes when you poke at them. The tile that you see off was removed. It was removed so that you could get a glimpse of the condition of the electrical work that's above there. Over the last 50 years, wires have been run for different purposes, but it's never been dressed up and properly put back in place. This is a quick glimpse of what is being proposed. Again, the locker rooms over on the right-hand side are between the cafeteria and the main. It proposes making 2 locker rooms / team rooms and storage room in the middle. Whenever you see a blank gray space, that is storage space. So on the right-hand side, you see 2 small locker rooms, team rooms, and storage in between. On the left-hand side of the large gym, you see the proposal for the renovation. It's actually reconstruction of the locker room area. You see now that the tiny little hallway and entranceway has been greatly expanded into a much more accessible and comfortable and appropriate and safe hallway. You'll notice that there are 2 doors, security doors. The physical education secretary's office is there, and she can control access to the building. Right now, we say the high school is secured. The reality is the front door is secured. Our back door is left unlocked because students are coming and going all day long for physical education. We can't lock our back door. This would allow for us to properly secure the building. It also places the athletic director and his secretary at the door to welcome and to monitor and to supervise the space. The locker rooms that you see at the top are the girl locker rooms and the girl team rooms. The ones that you see at the bottom are the boys locker rooms and the boys team room. And then at the bottom there is a second team room. That's a visiting team's team room. So when visitors come, that's where our visitors would be directed. So that's where they can go and change, suit up, equip, meet, etc. Much better facility. The office spaces are the ones that are orange. They're properly located now so that they reside between the locker rooms and the gym so that the teachers can properly supervise the students both in the locker room and to and from the gymnasium. The little gym that we mentioned, or the one that I call the wrestling gym, has been greatly expanded. It's expanded up to a 75-foot court, which is actually a regulation middle school court. It is not a regulation high school court, it is a regulation middle school court. It could not be used for high school competitive sports. It could be used for high school practices. It could be used for middle school games when the building became a middle school. It could be used for games. It gives us another facility for rental for park recreational teams, etc. So it expands it to a very usable gym size, very usable as a middle school, a very good practice gym and wrestling gym for a high school. Above that blue mini gym, there are classroom spaces that, when it becomes a middle school, are designated for special education. So there's a testing room, an office, and a small classroom for special education. To the left of the blue area, you see two spaces. The large gray space is the fitness room. It would be comprised of aerobic equipment and weight equipment. So that would be the health and wellness room, kind of the gym style, the gymnasium style fitness center. And above that, kind of the brownish, yellowish floor, that's a wood floor. That's actually a dance studio. It will be properly wired for sound. It's appropriate floor for dancing, and would have mirrors and those types of things. And it would have multiple purposes for cheerleaders, for aerobics, and it would also serve for a dance studio for our performing arts program as well. And then at the very bottom, you see two large, long gray areas. One of those is indoor storage, and the other one is outdoor storage. This is kind of a layout of the building. I think if I clicked on this, it would animate, and it would give you the animation that many of you see on the 10 network. I'm going to forego that this evening. Again, a picture of the space. The phasing of the project would basically be in 2 phases or 2.5 phases. The space to the far right, those 2 small locker room areas, if the bond were successful, those would happen during this summer, and they would be ready for September. They would be ready for the opening of school. The entire area on the far left, including the smaller gym, the fitness center, and the dance floor, that would begin as soon as school let out for the summer, and that would be ready by November. That's a very important date because until November, most of our physical education takes place outdoors. When the weather starts turning cold, youngsters come indoors. So right when the weather starts to get cold, we would have a brand new facility with a new gym, a new fitness center, and a new dance floor. So throughout this project, we would always be instructionally in much better place than we are now. I know that during some construction projects, when you're doing construction under operation, programs suffer. That would not be the case here. There would be no suffering. We would always instructionally be better than we are now. The part that would be a little bit of a struggle is actually the middle area, which is a locker room. The reconstruction of the locker room would begin in November, and it would end in about May, in and around May. So for the middle part of the year, after football, that's the good news, because you really need locker room space for football. That's the real demanding sport with all the equipment that they have and the numbers of young men that we have in football. But that football will be over, and for the middle of the school year, November to May, we will be short of locker space. We would have to retrofit some of the space that you see up here, and some other spaces in school. We'd have to make some temporary locker rooms. But we have a plan for that. We feel it would be minimally disruptive, and we would be able to complete this project by May. So it would be a pretty quick turnaround project. It would begin in June, and it would be done by the following May, completely done by that time. The project costs, the construction budget is $4,227,000. Furnishing and equipments. Furnishing equipment really is anything that if you turned the building upside down and you shook it, would fall out. So you're talking about mats, and you're talking about the aerobic equipment. You're talking about the dumbbell weights. You're talking about things like that. Owner's contingency. What an owner's contingency is, when you go into a reconstruction project, you run into some bad news, things you didn't anticipate. This puts some money in the budget so that we can we're covered if we have unpleasant occurrences. And then the architectural engineering fees are estimated at $380,000, $448, for a total district expenditure of $4,800,000. What we have done at this point is we have substantially gone through the building design, and we have also sent this out for what they call a test bid. And so these are not per square footage numbers or guess numbers. These are pretty well established and pretty well documented numbers, and numbers that we're very comfortable with, that we can in fact complete this project satisfactorily for the money that we're requesting. I think this is too small, the print's too small, but it's a detailed sheet, and as was announced by the moderator, you can find this information on the district website, and if you want to, you can go and you can actually see the breakdown in terms of how it breaks out for electrical, plumbing, et cetera, et cetera. Tax impact. Next year, very small. Next year's impact is only one small little bond payment of $82,000. So next year's impact is very, very tiny. And so the cost on next year's budget for the town of Atkinson would be $26,000, $10 for Danville, $28 for Plastow, and Sandown would be $16. So it would be, I think it's like 3 cents on 1,000 or something. It's a very small impact next year. The big impact actually happens, a 5-year bond is actually 6 years. You have the first year with a tiny little payment, and then you have 5 regular payments. So it's the second year, not in this current operating budget, not the one we're talking about, but it'll be in the 14 operating budget where you would see the largest impact. The impact is about $1 million a year in bond, $1 million each year. It diminishes as we go, but it's essentially $1 million each year. The estimated impact to taxes in the beginning for the town of Atkinson would be 42 cents per thousand. The way you can think about that is it would be about $120 for a $300,000 home. Danville about 127, Plastow about 127, and Sandown about 105. So again, that wouldn't be in the next operating budget. That would be in the 14 operating budget. You could anticipate the bond payment to impact taxes, home taxes, by about that much. That's my presentation, and we'd love to answer any questions anyone might have.
Thank you, Dr. LaSalle. Just before I continue, I did forget 2 introductions. One would be the assistant moderator, Norm Major, in the back of the room, and myself, Steve Ranlett from Plastow. With that introduction, I'll open it up to the floor. Again, if you could just state your name, also spell your last name for the clerk who's taking the notes.
Sure thing. My name is Todd Barbera, B-A-R-B-E-R-A, and I'm from Atkinson. First off, I have to tell you, this is the 3rd time I've seen the presentation, and I know you guys have done a good job of getting out there and educating the public, so I want to commend you for that. But I do have a couple questions. First, we have, I think, what, $203,000 in the capital reserve fund. Is there any reason why that's not being applied to this?
The capital reserve fund, I think that doing the projects we've done recently is relatively low, relatively expended. I know that $200,000 doesn't sound like a small amount of money. It's relatively expended, and I think that it was our feeling that it really needed reloading before we continued to spend against that account. And that to the degree that this was one job, we basically left it as one bond issue instead of splitting it into 2 different warrant articles.
Well, I guess to continue on with that thought, the bond was about 3%, and the capital reserve fund, I believe, is getting less than 0.25% interest. So to me, it seems like it's more fiscally responsible to apply the capital reserve as opposed to taking it out on the loan, which would save the taxpayers not a ton of money, but a few dollars.
Right. We do worry that without a capital reserve, if we have emergency situations, if we lose a roof or a septic system or something like that, we hate to spend it down too far because it leaves us a little bit vulnerable to unanticipated issues.
Although if you do lose a roof and you have an emergency fix, you still have to go to the voters to take it out from the capital reserve fund. So it becomes a planning issue.
Right.
Secondly, one of the concerns that I had, and coming from Atkinson, we have one of the oldest schools in the country in the academy, and I'm hearing the building end of life, and I guess I have to wonder how we get there we get to a point where a building gets so, in such a state of disrepair or just not being kept up, that all of a sudden now we have to replace the entire building because to try to bring it back up to code is cost prohibitive. So how do we get there, for one, and how do we prevent ourselves from getting there in the future moving forward?
Over the last about 7 years in this district, there has been much more of a commitment towards maintenance, preventative maintenance. All of the buildings in district right now are in really quite fine shape. There have been a number of projects that have been done over the last several years in terms of renovating all the kitchens. You saw that in Atkinson. In terms of infrastructure issues with wells, with septic systems, with heating plants. And the buildings right now, in terms of those smaller projects, are really, they're old, and sometimes they visually look old. I think if you visited any of our schools, except for the area that we're discussing tonight, I think what you would find is clean spaces in places, in spaces that are in really quite fine repair and in good shape. We are actually very pleased, and I think we feel pretty fortunate that our buildings, the concept in this district for a long time has been to take the old building and to make many additions onto that. And it's a strategy that can work, but it's a strategy that takes some planning and some initiative. And when you make a building bigger, but you don't attack the infrastructure, like improve the well or enlarge your kitchen to serve more students and those types of things, that's when a building begins to become deficient. And I think many of those areas are the things that we've attacked recently in terms of better water capacity in Danville, at Pollard coming up. Atkinson is being looked at in terms of their water over the next few years. So those infrastructure areas we're looking at. We feel that the buildings are clean. We think that they're in pretty good repair, and they have not, in fact, been ignored. One of the issues that we have, which is hard to explain in a way, is that if we were to go in and do anything other than minor repair to damage in the area that I showed you this evening, what it would trigger is, we're currently grandfathered in terms of a score of different codes. What it would trigger is a need to bring it up to compliance. So for instance, if I were to go in and fix that rather disgusting bathroom facility that I showed you, I have to bring that up to full ADA compliance. In order to do that, I would need twice the real estate that you see there. I would have to make it totally accessible for handicap. I would have to make the doors leading into that area accessible for handicap, the hallways leading into that area. So it's not the type of thing that you can necessarily do in small pieces. It's not just a matter of repairing something that's broken. It's if we go in there and touch that, we have to make it right. And that's why it's a project that we could have chunked it in two. We talked about over the last couple of years chunking this project in two, $2 million, $2 million. But that really in this economy did not seem feasible in terms of carrying an additional $2 million on the budget. So the proposal was, in fact, to do it seamlessly as one project, which has some major advantages as well in terms of tying all your systems together properly, and to bond it and to spread that debt over a little bit more time.
Okay, and one final question. The picture where it showed the wiring and I guess I'll use the phrase, it looked like it was done in a Mickey Mouse fashion. How do you ensure that next time work is done, that it's done properly and that you don't have to go back in after the fact and dress it up and spend money to redo the job? Because that to me is a waste of resources.
Well, I guess I have two answers to that. What you see there is what happens when you need to run one more line and it gets done, and then later on you need to run more lines. So that's not something that's done as a comprehensive renovation project. But I know for many people, and we're fully aware of that, they talk about the timing of a project like this where the economy is not good, and we fully are aware of that. And I've been here 7 years, and when I came here 7 years ago, and I first joined the school board and the budget committee on a facilities tour, the area that was identified as most in need was in fact the area we're talking about tonight. 7 years later, it still hasn't been done, and 7 years later, it's still the most in need, because it is not an easy, it's a larger project, and we understand that. But there comes a point where you have to do it, The other thing is that in one way, it's a very good time to do a project like this. Number one, we posted 3, but actually, when we went out and tested, it was 2.25 was the bond. So it's very cheap money right now in terms, so it's very good in terms of securing a low-interest bond. So from that standpoint, it's a very good time now. And the other thing is, it's also a very good time because it's a time where you can get good pricing on your bids, but you can also get quality labor on your bids. During really, busy construction periods, it's very difficult for a smaller project, and most major contractors would view this as a smaller project, to get the most qualified work on those bids. So we feel confident that we would get very good bond prices, very good bids, and very high-quality labor at this time. So from that standpoint, it's an ideal time to do a project like this. But again, we understand the economy and the impact that has on folks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Representative Deborah DeSimone, Atkinson, DE-SIMONE. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I think that in a better economy, what you're proposing would be a fabulous thing to do. However, I'm not only a representative who supports the moratorium, I'm also a tax collector in the town of Atkinson. And in a time where I'm receiving 3 to 5 foreclosure notices, where people can't pay their mortgages, and I have 142 of 3,000 people who can't pay their tax bill, how can we expect them to pay more for renovations that you're saying are not in a situation where it's a life-threatening or it's detrimental? It's just inconvenient. I know a lot of us are inconvenienced in a lot of ways. I had intentions of renovating my own home, but due to the economics of the current society, I've put that off for the future. Can't you wait?
Well, again, as I indicated, I think this project is a project that's waited a long time, and that's part of the issue as it continues to be less sufficient as we go. And it's really not inconvenient. It's really substandard in a way that, I would welcome people to visit the high school and see the space. It's substandard in the most significant way. And it also is not, the part that I can't show you is the part that we don't have and we've never had, which is what a modern high school facility looks like and what youngsters in, Exeter, Winnicott, Wyndham, Nashua, Bedford, Bow, Sauhegan, the facilities that they have at their disposal as compared to what our students have at our disposal. Ours is so substandard to any of that there really isn't a comparison. This isn't a project that we're asking for because the space is marginal. We're asking this because the space is, number one, unsafe, it doesn't meet codes, and it's instructionally, it's just very, very, very poor.
Thank you for your response, and I will go on record saying that in the town of Atkinson, I will not support. But thank you.
We understand.
Donna Green, Green, from Sandown. I have a few questions. I was wondering if you could tell me what the student population is projected to be in the future and what the need will be for a middle school and an upgraded high school. So could you address that first, please?
The enrollment projections over what period of time?
10 years?
The projections for the enrollments in Timberlane over the next 10 years are for about a 400 pupil drop. However, there is a disclaimer in the projections done by NESDEC that indicated that one of the reasons that the enrollments are projected at dropping as much as they are is actually tied to the economic situation, and that what's happening right now is homes are not selling. And so youngsters are going through our schools, they're aging out of our high schools, and families are not moving in because homes are not are not selling. So there is a disclaimer in there that they feel that there in fact may be a resurgence of growth, family growth in the communities when the economy turns around and homes begin to sell again. So it's projected to continue to drop over the next few years. The second part of the question, I think, had to do with the projected costs of high school and middle school. Was that?
No, if we're building a new middle school or high school with a projected falling student population, I was wondering what the logic of that was.
Well, the building of a new facility isn't only because you have more students. There's a qualitative issue as well as a quantitative issue. And again, the high school that we have is a high school designed and built in the 60s. It is not designed and built in any way to provide modern education. And our students, quite honestly, and again, I can't show you that other than to suggest, or I could maybe make arrangements for folks to visit a high school, a modern built high school, and see the types of things that students have at their fingertips and the types of learning that they're doing in a modern facility that is not, in fact, possible in a facility like Timberlane. It's a dated facility. It's a facility where people are doing the best they can. They're being creative. But it's literally a facility where a science teacher carries buckets of water into a classroom so that they can do an experiment. It's not a facility that has modern style facilities like.
Well, that brings up my next point. I thought you addressed that issue of the teacher bringing buckets of water to the science lab by upgrading the science lab. If the primary purpose of education is an academic focus, why are you still bemoaning the science facilities? It seems to me we should direct our resources to things that are more core to the academic curriculum.
Can I respond just to that? We have renovated all the science facilities to some degree. They were, in fact, at a point where they were not functioning. They had no running water, and they had no gas, no life safeties. And we have built 2 new science labs. We've done a major renovation on 2 additional science labs, and we have brought all science labs back to the point where they are functional. So that is something that we have done over the last several years. So we have been attacking the academic areas as well. We built 2 new science areas, and like I say, we built the design build of the engineering facility as well. So we've been, it's not that we've been attacking the physical education area and ignoring the academic areas. We've really been going through and trying to prioritize and identify the areas that we can make a difference. But again, we're making a difference typically with relatively short money. We're not going in and doing a major renovation inside that building. We're trying to target a room at a time, a space at a time.
So I have 2 more questions. What are the other medium-sized projects that you could be putting before the voters in the future?
Well, one medium project that we did put forward was actually the addition at Sandown North. That project was actually an economic more than an educational project, because at the time, and we haven't tested to see if that was the case, but at the time, it actually would have saved the district more money than it would have cost to make that addition. So the savings by closing one building would have more than paid for the addition. So that was more of an economic decision. But we did put that to the voters, and it wasn't well received. So that one's kind of on hold. Other major projects would be maybe taking steps that would get us closer to where we need to be, so that when it comes time to build a new high school, maybe the conversion of the middle school would be less expensive. There would be still some things that we could do there that would help move us in that direction. And other than that, like I indicated, we're feeling pretty good in terms of what our elementary schools are looking like right now.
Could you be a little bit more specific about what you would do in preparation for the new?
Well, as I indicated in my first slide when I was talking, there were 4 actually construction components to converting the high school into the middle school. There's some renovation inside, but I'm not talking about that. There's the corridor down the middle. I don't know that I would propose that right now as a high school. There's the connection of the high school to the Performing Arts Center, and then there was also the rebuilding of the administrative space, but more importantly, to creating additional classrooms. Right now, we're very, very short on classrooms at the high school. We have portables, and we have teachers sharing so that they, teachers moving on carts all day long. So additional classrooms would also make it a much more useful and efficient facility.
So what are your projected costs for those projects?
The projected I haven't had those costed out, but I suspect the largest of those, which would be the office and new classroom area, would probably be in the magnitude of what we're talking about tonight.
So about $5 million just for one of those 3 other projects?
Probably.
Okay, my final question. With the new weight training and the dance facility and whatnot, do you actually have the staff, the physical education instructional staff
Yes,
to handle weight training equipment?
Yes, we do.
Mm-hmm. So there shouldn't be any requirement for new PE staff?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other comments, questions on Article 2?
How you doing? Eric Kimball, Kimball, Atkinson, New Hampshire. One question I have is the moratorium, once it is lifted, will the renovations of the gymnasium area, the offices and the expanded hallway, will the sum of those roll up into an amount where the state would be able to help with that?
In order for a state project to qualify for the state, this is under the old rules. I don't know what the new rules will be. To qualify, it has to impact 25% of the overall value of the building, so that neither of those projects taken together would qualify. Would the full renovation of the high school into a middle school qualify with all the internal renovations, the facility, the athletic facility, the office space and classrooms, and the connection to the performing? It would be close, but I couldn't say definitively whether that would qualify. For it to be a project qualified under the state, it has to be a substantial project that touches, like I say, 25% of the value of that building.
Okay. It sounds pretty substantial as it's being built out in components already. I kind of agree with some of the comments that were already said. The reason the economic climate provides such a good building environment and bond financing environment is the same environment that makes it difficult to support this type of change. We're talking, the dollars of approximately $5 million construction. We still got a whole school that we want to build. I mean, this is a step towards that, and that's going to be dwarf this by a large amount. We still got a lot more renovations to do. So to me, this is a slippery slide down a very expensive slope, which I don't think the economy is favorable for this at this time. Personal opinion is that I know you put a lot into the science building areas already, but to see the kneecap scores come low, and as bad as they are, in my opinion, to put $5 million into a gymnasium for dance and everything else, I just can't justify that in my mind. Some of the things that were commented on, I don't really care about the keen students coming and having to go down a narrow hallway. I don't want to foot the bill for that. But I think there are other steps that we can do in terms of the maintenance to make things accessible, make things workable without doing a full renovation. And I just think that the more thought has to be put into that due process. So I probably will not support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns on Article 2? Yes, you can.
My name is Michael Mascola. I'm the representative from Atkinson.
Not on mic.
I don't think it's closer, it's just think it's not on. Okay. Michael Mascola from Atkinson, New Hampshire. I've heard some comments from the audience, so I'd just like to put this out there. Maybe Mr. LaSalle can help me along the way. The first one was, is this a good time to do any building? It's got its pros and cons. I think people have echoed their concerns out there. But one of the things I'd like to share is when we did our bond back in, I believe, the year 2000. It was a 10-year bond. The economy was better, but we never anticipated within that 10 years, we would have an economy like this. So while we're looking to build now, we don't know what the economy will be like in a few years. So things are very cyclical. We don't know what things will be like as the bond is being paid off over time. So I think it's always wise to try and go when the interest rates are low. It's always nice to try and get a project done when we can get the best construction quality work for the price. But you have to obviously factor it in with your concerns out there of it is a tough economic time out there. So that's number one. And the second one, and I'm asking my front row to help me out up here. All students are required to, I believe, go through at least one, was it saying 2 years of, 2 semesters of health education. So when we talk about this project in Article 2, I'd ask you not to think of just the people that are participating in extracurricular activities, sports, dance, stuff like that. It's all students will be going through this project area. Thank you.
Sir?
Ralph Millard, Sandown, New Hampshire, Millard. I just want to mention, once before I mentioned if we get a fair playing field, you people all get to lean on something. We should have a podium up here for the elderly people. Also, I want to make, part of it is because when we come up, we're old, sometimes we shake. It's good when we brush our teeth, but terrible when we shave. I'm going to speak on whether I'm not going to speak on whether I'm for or against the warrant article. I just want to ask why the high school building has been allowed to get into such a deplorable condition. School district managers would never have let their own homes deteriorate into the condition the high school is presently in. It appears it happened because the district managers, especially the district maintenance director, failed to have any kind of a preventive maintenance plan to keep all of the district schools in good condition. Instead of hiring only custodians, they should have created a district maintenance crew consisting of electricians, plumbers, carpenters, equipment managers, etc. I realize they would have had to pay the tradesmen the going rates, and as we can see by the condition of high school, it was a case of pay me now or pay me much more later. We can't go back to correct what happened at the high school, but we can make sure we don't let it happen again in the future by implementing a good preventive district maintenance program headed up by trained and qualified tradesmen. If we previously had a real preventive maintenance program for the high school, we wouldn't have had to pay again like we are now. We are paying many times over for what happened. Thank you.
Dr. LaSalle?
I don't disagree with you in any way. We, in fact, over the last several years have employed a trades. We do have an electrician and a plumber, HVAC person on staff. And I can only speak for the last 7 years, but the improvements over the last 7 years in this district have been quite remarkable. As I indicated before, our boilers are all up to snuff. Our roofs are up to snuff. 7 years ago, much as you indicated, every time it rained, we would have 20, 30 buckets in the high school collecting water. We have none of that anywhere in this district now. You visit the bathrooms, they've all been cleaned up, upgraded, they're all serviceable. I would invite you to visit the high school or any of our schools and see the conditions of the cleanliness and the brightness of the schools. They actually look and they actually are quite good. There are exceptions to that, or very few exceptions, and what I showed you tonight, unfortunately, is exactly one of those exceptions where the space is very, very tired. I've made this presentation probably 20 times, and I made the presentation, and there was a young lady that went through our school and went through our program in 1980, and her comment was, it looked exactly like that in 1980. So this isn't just because, you know, all of a sudden, we're not caring for the for the property. It's just, it's worn out. It really is just flat out worn out at this point, and much in need of more than just deferred maintenance. And it's really in need of renovation and, in fact, reconstruction in some cases. But I would invite anyone from the public to visit our schools, because I think what you'll find, if you haven't visited them recently, is I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised. I think that our new maintenance staff, our new maintenance director, have made, over the last 5 years, have made an incredible difference in the schools, and they're looking quite good. Or even within your own hometown, visit the elementary schools and visit and see the buildings. We're pretty proud of them, to be honest with you. This area is not an area we're proud of, and that's why we feel it needs to be remedied. But thank you. I don't disagree with you in any way.
Thank you. Yes?
Kathy Lisi, Sandown, Lisi. Just to kind of follow up with Mr. LaSalle said, there are some public tours already scheduled for anybody that wants to actually see the need for this renovation. This Sunday from 12:30 to 4, there's a committee there that's willing to give up their time to show the public the locker rooms and the athletic wing and the problems. Monday night, February 13th, Mr. Woodward's hosting, he's the principal at the high school, he'll be hosting coffee with the principal, giving a presentation and tours. And then March 7th, from 6:30 to 8:30, there'll also be tours given that night. So anybody who wants to see it prior to deliberations has the opportunity.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on Article 2 on the bond? On the bond issue? Dave? Comments? Questions on the Article 2?
Dave Hammond from Atkinson, New Hampshire, Hammond. In terms of the renovation, I think I'm kind of torn on this issue because I know that locker room. I used that locker room when I was in high school. I don't want to admit how long ago that was. But to me, the need is apparent. The challenge is making the numbers work. And I think, you know, you're hearing some of the comments tonight where people are basically saying that asking people to pay more is a big problem. And I have a hard time disagreeing with that. So I think, in my opinion, it comes down to a matter of spending priorities. And in terms of the budget, taking a look at what the spending priorities are and sharpen your pencils and see if you can find money in the budget that you have to work with now to try and make something like this happen. The fear I have is that the kids, fiscally, you know, there's two sides I see. Fiscally, you've got an issue here, right? Trying to raise some money. At the same time, I don't want to see the kids penalized and have to continue to use a substandard facility. And I don't disagree, it is substandard. I think it needs to be fixed. I think it should have been fixed 10 years ago, is my personal opinion. So I think that if the voters don't vote for it, the losers at the end are the kids. But at the same time, financially, if they don't vote for it, I have a hard time disagreeing with them on that side of the equation. So my opinion is I think it's a matter of spending priorities, and I think the folks here, if you look in that direction, maybe that would be a better way to go. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions on Article 2? There being none, Article 2 will appear on the ballot as read.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article number 2.
There's been a motion made to restrict. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second.
I'll second it.
For anybody that's not familiar with restricting, what it means is that once we vote on Article 2 on the amendment, it can't be brought up again in the meeting. Put on the floor for discussion. Any discussion on the motion to restrict? There being none, call for a vote. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. No? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Okay, moving on to Article 3, the operating budget. Shall the Timberlane Regional School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles or other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session, for the purposes set forth therein totaling $62,821,817. Should this article be defeated, the operating budget shall be $62,568,852, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Timberlane Regional School District or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40, 13, Roman numeral 10 and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Note, warrant Article 3, the operating budget, does not include appropriations proposed under any other warrant articles, and a majority vote is required. It's recommended by the school board 8-0 and recommended by the budget committee. Is there a motion to place this on the floor?
I'll make the motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Oh.
Second it. And for the, Michelle?
Good evening. My name is Michelle O'Neill, and I'm the chairman of this year's school budget committee. We have a brief agenda for Article number 3, what the budget committee is, what our duties are, and who our members are, the historic trend of the budget, major budget factors, the recommended budget versus the default budget, and the tax impact. We are a citizen oversight committee. We oversee the budget to the Timberlane School District. We start out the year by having presentations by the administrators, principals, and department heads. The superintendent gives a presentation and brings forth a budget to us. We have comments and suggestions from citizens groups, our own committee members, and anybody else willing to speak to us. We ask questions, we make suggestions, and we also make changes to the budget. Current members, we've already introduced ourselves. We do have a couple of vacancies because we did have a couple of members resign in the middle of this year. The proposed budget for the 2012-2013 year is $62,821,817. The current budget voted last year by the voters is $62,937,055. The proposed budget is $115,238 less than the budget we're currently in. That's a decrease of 0.18%. This proposed budget is recommended by both the school board and the budget committee. For the last 5 years, we've had the following budgets. As you can see, we've gone from $58,708,070 up to this year's proposed budget of $62,821,817. Doing the math, that's a 4.96% increase over 5 years. The budget historically has increased 1% per year over the last 5 years. The big budget factors this year, the state has pushed back some of the teacher retirement onto the school districts. They don't have the money in the state budget, so they say, we're sorry, we don't have it, you have to pay it. We've seen an increase of $554,000 in that. Professional services showed an increase of $98,995. This actually isn't a bad increase. We hire a company to do our Medicaid billing. This increase is to pay for that Medicaid billing. The Medicaid billing is used for our special needs students and so forth. They go out, they bill, they get the money back from Medicaid. So the money we're getting and that we're submitting to Medicaid, we have to pay these people to process. They're getting more funds back from Medicaid for us, but in the meantime, we have to pay them more for the work they do. But this increase is to offset that money they're getting back for us. We have a slight increase in the books and information resources and software, increase in supplies, equipment, and other things, for a total increase of $843,086. We do have decreases in the operating budget. The capital reserve fund. Employee benefits are down, employee insurance is down, salaries are down, employee retirement is down, the interest on the bond goes down as it does every year. Our tuition costs to other districts and to other places is down. Our transportation costs are down. We did eliminate one bus route in Plastow. And our repair and maintenance and renovation costs are down, for a total decrease of $958,324. This is just to show you sort of in a graphical form, major budget factors. The big hit this year to us is the teacher retirement. We have no choice. We have to pay this money. We can't tell the state, we're not paying it, you pay it, because the state's going to say, we're not paying it, you pay it. Somebody has to pay, and eventually it's going to be us, the taxpayers in the school district. Some other major changes between the two different budgets, between this year's current budget and the proposed budget for next year. We have an increase in salaries and benefits. We have an increase in instruction-related items. We do have a decrease in facilities, and we have an overall decrease in other items, for a total decrease of $115,238. Salaries are decreased by $135,000. Insurance has gone down. Again, that New Hampshire retirement teachers has gone up. New Hampshire retirement employees has gone down. And our Social Security, workers' comp, and unemployment costs has gone down, for a total increase of $42,416. For instruction-related, we have a decrease in special ed and vocational tuition of $79,978, an increase in books, increase in equipment, professional services, and supplies, for a total increase in instruction-related of $189,840. Facilities, we've asked for a decrease in renovation and repair. Our utilities costs have gone down, and again, the bond interest has gone down, for a total decrease for facilities of $136,000. Other things, transportation is down. The school administrative unit, SAU 55, is giving us a decrease of $11,000. Capital reserve is a decrease, and others an increase, for a total decrease of $211,000. The recommended budget is $62,821,817. If that fails, the default budget would be $62,568,852, for a difference of $252,965, or a difference of 0.4%. This is what everybody wants to know, the estimated tax rate impact. On average, the difference between the recommended and default would be 10 cents per thousand throughout the different communities. Cost per pupil. These numbers here, the cost per pupil numbers, are on the State Department, the New Hampshire Department of Education website. The state average is $12,214. For Timberlane, it's $11,762 per student. 35 districts in the state spend less than we do. 127 districts spend more. Now, these numbers, too, is not simply taking the total budget and dividing it by the number of students. There's other factors that go into it, because such things as some capital costs don't get rolled into it, because some school districts may have more elementary schools, so they have more buildings and more capital costs. So it's not a direct relation to be able to take your default budget or your budget number and divide it by the number of students. Voting is going to be March 13th at the different places. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. I'll place it on the floor for discussion. Are there any comments? Discussion on the budget? Yes, Mrs. Green.
Thank you. As I understand it, the teachers did not get a raise this year, but the administrative staff with the SAU did. Could you speak to that, please, if I'm correct? Or
The SAU budget is not covered by the Timberlane Budget Committee. The SAU budget is actually a collaboration of the Hampstead School Board and the Timberlane School Board. They determine all of the SAU budget, and they make that decision, and then they tell us how much the Timberlane portion is of that.
And was I correct that the teachers did not get a raise this year?
The teacher contract was up, so that goes to the collective bargaining agreement, so that's not a part of the default budget this year.
Could you explain that to me?
I can explain.
No, please.
Yeah, thank you.
This was a year we were negotiating with the teachers, and so the teacher's contract is a separate warrant article. It's actually warrant article number 5 that's on the ballot. And the net result of the negotiations between the school board and the teachers union actually nets out 0 cost items. So there's no raise, there's no benefit increases in the teacher's contract. So that's correct.
Any other comments on the Article 3, operating budget? Okay, there being none, that will be placed on the ballot as read. Article 4, capital reserve fund. Shall the Timberlane Regional School District raise and appropriate up to $200,000 to be placed in the school building construction, reconstruction, capital improvement, and land purchase capital reserve fund established in 1996, with such amount to be transferred from the June 30th, 2012 unassigned fund balance or surplus available for transfer on July 1st of this year. And also a majority vote is required. The funds for this article come from the 2011-2012 school budget surplus, not from additional taxes. This was recommended by the school board and also recommended by the budget committee 8-0. And for that presentation, I believe, actually, is there a motion? Place it on the floor. Motion by Peter, is there a second? Seconded. George, presentation?
No formal presentation. Commonly, people inquire what the balance is currently, and the current balance is $203,000 in the capital reserve fund.
Any comments? I'll put it on the floor. Comments, questions, concerns? Okay, Article 4 will be placed on the budget as read. Article 5, the collective bargaining agreement, Timberlane Teachers Association. Shall the Timberlane Regional School District approve the cost items included in a one-year collective bargaining agreement reached between the Timberlane Teachers Association and the Timberlane Regional School Board, which calls for a $0 increase in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels. So that's a 0 estimated increase, and to further raise and appropriate no funds for the upcoming fiscal year, such sum representing the fact that there are $0 in additional cost attributed to increases in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels in the current fiscal year. There's also a majority vote required on that. It's recommended by the school board, recommended by the budget committee. Is there a motion to place that on the floor?
I'll make a motion to place that on the floor.
Motion been made. Second? Seconded. Dr. LaSalle, do you want to address this, or? No? I'll put it on the floor for any comments, concerns, questions? There being none, Article 5 will be placed on the budget as read. On the ballot. Article 6, the authorization for a special town meeting on cost items. Shall the Timberlane Regional School District, if Article 5 is defeated, authorize the Timberlane Regional School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 5 and the cost items. What this is for is in case Article 5 is defeated, they can go back and they can negotiate 0 items dollar items, and they can call a special meeting without having to go to the Superior Court, attorney's fees, and the costs that are associated with that. Is there a motion for Article 6? Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second's been made. I'll open it up to the floor. Any comments? Questions, concerns? Article 6 will be placed on the ballot as read. Article 7, general acceptance of reports. Shall the Timberlane Regional School District accept reports of agents, auditors, and committees as written in the 2011 annual report? Majority vote is required on this also. Is there a motion to put it on the floor?
I'll put it on there.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Second by Michelle. I'll put it on the floor. Any comments, questions, concerns? There being none, Article 7 will be placed on the ballot as read. Michelle?
Before we end the meeting, I'm assuming that's the next step?
That's the next step.
All right, I want to get my last 2 cents in here.
Go ahead.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the following members of the Budget Committee for their service. Kate Rochford for 3 years, Patricia Holt for 1 year, Michelle Conti for 3 years, Heidi Chaput for 3 years. This year, Norm Bouchard resigned after 3 years, and Donald Cook resigned within his first year. There are currently openings on the Budget Committee. Although it is too late to have your name officially put on the March 13th ballot, write-in candidates are welcome to serve. The openings are as follows: Atkinson, 2-year term; Danville, 2-year term; Plastow, 2-year term; Plastow, a 3-year term; Sandown, a 3-year term. If no one accepts a write-in position, anyone interested after the March 13th vote may submit a letter of interest to the SAU. If that candidate is accepted by the committee, they would serve a 1-year term until the March 2013 election. If there are any questions, please contact the SAU or myself. Thank you.
And before we close this meeting, I would just like to thank Michelle for being a champion and a wealth of knowledge to the Budget Committee. And I think you've been here 9 years. So congratulations to you also.
Anybody else? Okay, I guess I'll thank the Budget Committee and the school board, also the administration, all the teachers and staff and everybody. You guys do a tremendous job every year. Thank you very much for everybody that showed up tonight, and I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.